Well, great to be with everyone today. It's a bit of a drive from Marietta. It's 3.5 hours, but it was 3 hours and 35 minutes because I drove by the KFC hall and went up the road. But it's a beautiful day for a drive, so I really enjoyed it. Who am I? Some of you may know me out there. First, I want to start actually by acknowledging the folks. Thank you, Glenn, for putting this on. Glenn is a constant presence on social media, and we actually have some social media Common Core All-Stars here. Mary Capella's here, Paul Mittermeier. If you're on social media, you get the benefit of things that they have found that I think are very useful to you. So if you're not on Facebook, you can trust them. Gates will be keeping your data anyway, but please go there and interact and engage with folks on social media, because that's been one of the most helpful things for me to get the message out there. The speech that we just had was an intellectual tour de force. It was highly intellectual, which I appreciated coming from the think tank world. Not everybody can absorb it, and one of the struggles that we have in Columbus is getting people to understand just kind of the basic problem that we're dealing with here. You can overwhelm them, and their eyes might glaze over, about 10 minutes into your presentation. And so we have a challenge here. I do want to acknowledge a colleague of mine, Robert McCauley, who is a newly elected state representative, and he represents his district. He's in back. He is so much younger than I am, and so much younger looking that people might think that he's too young to be a state legislator, but he's already a good ally of mine up in Columbus, and he understands it. First of all, he understands it because he's very, very fond of Putnam County here, and what a great job, very strong philosophically here, very dedicated, very pro-life. They kind of get it. One of the things that David Barton has said is that if you don't get the life issue right, you're not going to get anything else right, and I think he's very much fundamentally on point there. I'm a father of four, counting our AFS student. We have an AFS student from Brazil. I don't think they have Common Core down there, but they probably have some kind of governmental education problems. But I have a 14-year-old who is on the cutting edge of Common Core testing. He's been opted out, and he was, very. Okay, was there applause there? Thank you very much. I was worried that he wouldn't want to be opted out because he would kind of stand out as a sore thumb among his contemporaries, but he was very pleased to have been opted out. He actually had a kid in the school who said, "If you don't like this testing, blame Andy Thompson. He's our state rep." And I said, "I didn't do this stuff." Since they're going to turn the hoses on Andy Thompson, but that opt-out is very, very important, and that's something else too that Rob Coburn actually gets a lot of credit. He designed that opt-out site, and we have utilized that very, very effectively. Those of you, we have some folks who I think are probably mostly actively engaged, but we also have, I think, some school board members here as well. And there was a kind of a mixed feelings about that. As a school board member, you're worried about your grade for your district and how that's going to affect you. But fundamentally, in the absence of a solution, as we've been struggling in Columbus to try to get this across the finish line, your only defense is civil disobedience, and in this case, standing up for your kids. As Rob said, if your school board members won't do it, certainly you have to do it. And then try to hold them accountable as much as possible. Ask them to come to the table, ask them to listen, and ask them to empower kids to do this. What we've been trying to do in Columbus is to provide them safe harbor for this, to not punish kids for opting out, to not punish districts for the kids who do opt out, and to not punish teachers for the results of those scores. So I think that's one positive way that we facilitate people being able to better exercise their fundamental rights as parents. So again, we're continuing to work on this legislatively. Our first gambit was House Bill 237. And I think, again, perhaps being somewhat naive, thinking that if we brought the truth to people, it would just magically fly through and everybody would say, "Kumbaya!" and we would have our results. It wasn't that simple. One of the things you learn fundamentally is that money, follow the money. You always follow the money because the money matters. But also Ohio matters. And why does Ohio matter so much? Well, look at the presidential elections. Why did Gates, kind of decide to make this one of his core places to put his money? He has spent many, many years and many, many dollars, and he's got more. He just keeps making more, especially thanks to Common Core. So he's willing to spend it all to make sure that he maintains his control in our state. And we have a lot of things that sound really good and kind of impressive. You remember the name Battelle? Battelle is just highly regarded scientific think tank and supposedly doing lots of good stuff for society. But they have become a co-conspirator on Common Core. I don't know what the last count is. It was $19 million at one point that they had gotten. And as we were doing our hearings in Columbus and trying to get our educational message out there, one of the things we kept, you kept pulling over rocks and a few cockroaches would run out. It was really revealing to us to find out how many people had been seduced by the money, either willingly or unintentionally, I guess. It flows out from Battelle. National PTA got $1 million. They didn't like me mentioning that in the hearing. So everywhere you turn, there was somebody else who had cashed a check, and those checks keep coming. In politics, money is an issue sometimes. People think it's all driven by money, and you just take that check and you decide where you stand. It's not necessarily, it's not that simple. I think, the best legislators go there with their principles and they retain those principles. There are other legislators who go there without any particular principles, and they're kind of like the windsock out at the airport. It blows this direction and it blows that direction. You as citizens have to try to help these people find their courage and find their principles and steer them in the right direction. I know that we've had some folks that we've successfully converted in Columbus. Dorothy, just to name names, Dorothy Kalida was one of them. Is anybody here from Dorothy's district? I guess not. She was on the committee when we brought forward House Bill 597. Dorothy was kind of a reluctant participant in that, but she'd heard in her district that people were very, very concerned. As a matter of fact, it came up in her primary election. But after sitting through testimony, it became crystal clear to her. She's an attorney, but she also saw how this legally was really, how Common Core had come into Ohio legally was really, not there, not appropriate. She saw the fact that there were, they didn't want the legislature involved in the process. They kept the legislature out of the process. They kept teachers in Ohio out of the process. They kept school boards and everyone else out of this process. It was inconvenient for citizens to actually have a voice in this, because citizens would have objected, just like in forums like this. If citizens had known what was going on, absolutely they would have shut it down, and absolutely they would have probably marched on Columbus, but it kind of stealth. We heard the word stealth. Yeah. We heard the word, Ohio was willingly seduced by the dollars. Ohio was happy to have the money in a time of financial crisis. And as Heidi and I are working now, it's kind of like, kind of like Hansel and Gretel. You're trying to follow the breadcrumbs back to where you were, except the breadcrumbs have already been eaten by the greedy birds up in Columbus. So we're trying to kind of get us back to an environment where we weren't so much government controlled, and ironically that would be No Child Left Behind. And not that I'm praising No Child Left Behind, but compared to Common Core, it looks much better. Back when times were so simple. So we have to, over time we have to get back to where we have more empowering of local districts, where we have more authority at the local level. To these people who you see in church on Sunday, and you can chew their ear if they're not doing what you ask them to do. I think about school boards and how we train school boards. That's another problem in Ohio. You get elected as a school board member, you go off to an Ohio School Board Association meeting, and they tell you your job is to pass levies. Just shut up, do what you're told. We'll tell you what the policy is supposed to be, and you're just here to pass levies and tell everybody things are hunky-dory. School board member is such a vitally important part of the community. Now, the problem that we have in Ohio is we've taken all their power away. All these decisions are made someplace else. It comes from DC down to the State Department of Education, down from them to the interest groups and the school board associations and those people. they tell your superintendent what to do, and your superintendent tells the school board, and they rubber stamp what he's supposed. Again, I'm generalizing here, but that kind of gives you an idea of the way things work. We all tend to defer to authority. Those people know more than I do. I'm just a lowly school board member, and you may not have the confidence of your convictions to do what you need to do. But if you are a school board member, I want you to realize, first of all, thank you for coming today, because you're opting into knowing more about this and to being informed and to being educated. Your role is really to stand up for the children, because this is the most important thing that we do in the state. Yeah, agriculture is pretty important. That's our number one industry. You know, our faith matters and our principles matter, but educating kids is the most important thing we do. And so you as a school board member are to stand up righteously for the kids and to look and see what's going on in the classroom and to make sure that we're getting it right. And Common Core doesn't allow us to get it right. It really does not. It doesn't allow teachers to do what they're best at. My wife is a teacher. I don't know if I mentioned that. She teaches Spanish, but even she is kind of affected by Common Core, even though it's ELA, English Language Arts, and in math, it's has pervaded and impacted everywhere. She has to fill out student learning objectives so that they can evaluate her ability to take a kid from 0 to 99 in 1 year. We know that that's kind of a farce. How do you have somebody who's not very smart at the beginning, a genius at the end, and then you hand them off? They need to not be a genius next year so that teacher can do well. So it's really kind of perverse the way that it works out. But Common Core will help us dumb them down, so hopefully, so we're, I know I'm rambling a little bit here, but I think the thing is Common Core has really disabled our ability to have that local control that we talked about. And so that's been the purpose of my goal in Columbus, to help liberate, to be the front person along with you all for trying to make this change. Heidi Huber and I didn't mention her, although I know she spoke earlier. She's just been relentless. I mean, she has really been. I don't think she sleeps. She may be a vampire or a zombie. But she's a good zombie. She's helping us. And she certainly stays in touch with me. She probably ought to be either a legislator or working at the Legislative Service Commission, because she is constantly engaged with those folks, and she knows the code and she understands it, and she really helps those of us who really want to help you. I'm sure there'll be some prize for her. Hopefully she will get rewarded for that. I don't know how she affords to do what she does. I don't know how she comes up with the time to do what she does. I complained about a 3-hour and 30-minute drive. She does that all over the state. She goes a lot of places and speaks. So maybe we'll pass the can for her a little later here. But we need people who will do that. We need people who will stay engaged from the local level on up through running for state legislature. And being involved with those people. Glenn keeps me informed. He stays in touch. Roy Wagner's doing some great filming. We have some good stormtroopers working on this issue, but they get tired sometimes. So feel free to jump in there and help. Feel free to acknowledge them and thank them for the good work that they're doing. It's tiring. And if this were the only thing we had to do in Columbus, maybe we would have solved it by now. But right now we're in the budget process. That's another whole complex document that we're working on. I don't even know Robert's committees particularly, but he's having to drink out of a fire hydrant, as we say. He's getting up to speed and learning and meeting with people, and everybody wants to get to know you and be your best friend up there in Columbus. So he's having to deal with that. But what's good about trying to get people to understand this is if you've got kind of a good set of core principles, we can work with that. If you don't, it's a problem, because the talking points sound so great. It's a 21st century global society. We just want to have standards. We want to help our kids do great. And we're trying to compete with the Chinese and the Indians. And it's just, we need to centrally plan this. We need to have government run this, because they've done such a great job with Amtrak and the Postal Service. We've got a good model for success there. I guess if your kid wants to work for Amtrak or be a postal worker, maybe Common Core is perfect. But no, we've got a lot of challenges. I'm not complaining about it. I actually enjoy what I do because I obviously get to work with a lot of smart people, get to work with some dedicated folks. And Common Core is a cause that I'm passionate about. They laugh in Columbus. Sometimes they joke and say, I get $25 every time he mentions Common Core. And actually funny, and when we have vacation, we'll have an issue come up on the floor. And I had my aide who got a job elsewhere, and I was giving his goodbye speech, and I managed to work in there. He really hates Common Core. So, we're keeping the flame alive there, and you got to use humor, because humor is, I think, a very effective tool. If you can make Gates and all these people look as absurd as they are, then people kind of get it, and it kind of diminishes their power. I don't know if I dreamed as a boy that I would grow up and be fighting against the richest man in the world. But hey, he's there, and we've got to do it. And I'm a capitalist. I love free market capitalism. I never complained about his ability to become a multi-billionaire. I just don't want him to do it on the backs of our kids and at their expense. So, in order for us to prevail, we're going to have to be willing to, use the slingshot, see if we can bring Goliath down. And it is a good biblical analogy, because we are fighting against a really powerful force that is evil at its root. And it's kind of like, we're going to need lots of bottles of Roundup to take this thing out of here. So that was a good corporate plug for the agricultural industry out there. So we've got to fight ahead of us. But I do feel confident. I do think some things have changed. When we introduced House Bill 597, they said, well, it's a dog and pony show. Nothing's going to happen. We didn't get the result that we wanted, but I'll tell you what we did get. We did raise the profile of this. We did get editorial coverage around the state talking about this. We know that the polls are outstanding. We know that the brand of Common Core is about as low as Value Jet right now. It's really bad. And we have the facts on our side. We have the polls on our side. We need to get more politicians on our side. We need to make it the #1 presidential issue so that everybody's talking about it. I may get $25, or somebody's going to get $25 every time I mention Common Core, but we want the politicians to get it, and we want the leaders to get it. I think we see some progress. Heidi has got a chance to sit with Bobby Jindal. He seems to have tuned up a little bit better. Nothing better than a reformed smoker. Once you see, and you change, and you figure out the truth, and you get it, then you can do better, and you can be quite an effective person on our side of the argument. So, continue to talk to your friends and neighbors, encourage them to get educated. Maybe they're not going to be as educated as you are, but we want to kind of get them on board and kind of move them along as we can. I know it's exhausting sometimes. I was the founder of the Tea Party in Marietta. I was founder of the 912 group in Marietta. In some cases, it's kind of dwindled down to 42 people, and it's just because it's exhaustion. And Obama's still there. And in this case, he's got Jeb Bush as an ally, and he's got Mike Huckabee as an ally, and a lot of people that we would otherwise have thought that were okay, but they're not, because they're wrong on the fundamental issue that we're fighting here. Well, don't worry, Glenn, you have local control. So we do really have a fight that's ongoing. We have House Bill 138, which is really rolling out on Tuesday. It will have a sponsored testimony. That is a permissive bill, and by that I mean districts, if this passes, can then say we're not going to give the second half of PARK, which is underway right now. But we call it the Go Back to Teaching bill. So drop the testing, go back to teaching, give your kids a little bit of relief from this oppressiveness, and if that passes, that's kind of an interim step. And then Heidi and I are working on the next upgraded, new and improved version of Common Core repeal, with hopefully we're going to eliminate the teacher evaluation system, which has become a farce. It really has. It does not mean our teachers won't be held accountable, but we're going to ask our superintendents and our principals to kind of fulfill the function that they're asked to do. And I think, again, they can do it. They're capable. If they don't do it, find somebody new. But I think we can simplify it so the teachers aren't spending hours upon hours upon hours giving their data over to somebody like Pearson. And then they can focus on teaching and getting better at what they do. And fundamentally, I think we can follow those, whatever breadcrumbs are left, back to where we were before this crisis ensued. And you're going to be vitally important in that fight. So thank you so much for coming today. I'm glad to answer questions later.